And I'm in Carson City, Nevada, at the office of Nevada Winds, 200 South Carson Street, or Suite 200, Suite 200, 1800 Carson City, South 1802 South Carson Street. North Carson Street.
North
Carson Street.
Okay.
In Carson City, Nevada, at the home or the main office of Nevada Winds. Wind Pack. With former Washoe County Chairman Michael Kadenacy, who's also in what role with the Nevada Winds Pack?
I'm the non-executive chairman of the board.
So non-exec chair of the board.
Chair of the board.
Would it be informal or formal to call you the chair?
I prefer Michael.
Michael. Okay. So you're Michael Kadenacy today.
Correct.
And we're conducting this interview at the office, and we're asking some questions regarding his former role as former chairman of the Washoe County Republican Party, but also probing questions on what Nevada Winds is as well.
Okay.
So, Michael, I'm used to calling you Mr. Chairman as your former
Michael.
role. But Michael, if you may quickly do a quick introduction about yourself, who are you?
Well, I'm Michael Kadenacy, and I'm the former chair of the Washoe County Republican Party. Currently, I'm the non-executive chairman of the board of the Nevada Winds PAC.
And how did you find yourself in that role?
For the past 5 years in Washoe County Party, we have been building a team that's focused on winning elections for Republicans. Part of that effort is aimed at the independents, which is the fastest growing demographic within the state of Nevada. Right now in Nevada, it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's 1/3 Dems, 1/3 Republicans, and 1/3 registered to no major party. Because of that, the team believes, that to win elections, especially in competitive districts, you have to have a program that goes after those kind of voters. We did that. In my first term, when the team was just coming together, we had one goal, and that was to increase voter turnout. And in that cycle, which was the 17-18 cycle, we increased Republican turnout by 12 percentage points. That means we brought out an additional 12,000 Republican voters. In the second term, which was 1920, we decided as a team that our goal needed to be to get out of the superminority position within the assembly. Again, we targeted specific districts. We targeted one state senate district, so we would not lose ground, and 5 assembly districts. 2 of them were in Washoe County, 3 were in Clark County. The result of that effort, and I will get into what that effort was, we flipped 2 seats, one more than we actually needed to get out of the superminority. Out of the 6 races we targeted, we won 5. How did we do that? We put paid interns from both UNR and UNLV. And we put them on the ground, we trained them, they walked, they called, and they polled. And the result of that was, in Clark, out of the 3 races we targeted down there, we won 2. These were flippable races. These were races where we were very close. Let's put it this way, they were competitive races.
Okay.
Winning was not a given. And we firmly believe, that the reason we won in the 2 that we did down there and up here in Washoe was specifically because we went after those independents, and we were able to move those independents. One thing that really brings it to the fore why the independents are so important is the result. If you look at the last general election, at the top of the ticket. Now, it's not something we worked on because we were looking at the state legislature. But the results of the Amadei and Trump-Biden races in Washoe County are instructive. Amadei won his race, and he won it because he won the lion's share of the independents. These are the same voters now that voted in the presidential election, and it was just the opposite.
Right.
The independents broke for Biden big time. If you're going to win in Nevada or in Washoe, and certainly in Clark, where independents are almost 40% of the electorate, you have to address the independents. We do that.
You have to address the independent vote. So your focus was, besides getting base turnout, was to focus on the segment of the electorate that swings.
Correct. Because that's how you win competitive races.
Right.
Getting out the vote is becoming less an issue in Washoe and even in Clark. In this last election, Republicans turned out 91%. Pardon my French, that ain't too friggin' bad.
Touche. 91%.
91% in a major metropolitan area, that's pretty good.
That is.
So, however, you have two issues with independents. One is they're conservative leaning. That doesn't mean they're conservative. It means they lean conservative. How do we know that? We've already polled. We've made over 100,000 polling calls in the districts we're looking at in this next election.
That was 91,000?
Pardon?
100,000.
100,000.
100,000.
100,000 calls, good.
I'm sorry, I lost.
We made 100,000 calls.
100,000 calls polling, basically to try to find out what are the independent issues. What is their hot buttons? I think one of the problems that you have, especially some of, let's say, the more vocal parts of the Republican Party, is that they assume that the issues that are near and dear to them are the ones near and dear to everybody. Our polling indicates otherwise. That doesn't mean we want to push them away. In fact, if we're going to win for Republicans, we need to draw those into the tent.
Right. So your focus was to grab a segment of the electorate that swings as much as possible, find out what they want, and deliver.
And deliver for them. Exactly. Consistent with conservative values. Mm-hmm. But most of these people share most of those values. You're not going to find every voter agreeing with every other voter on everything. Okay. The trick is to create coalitions that actually elect someone, because you cannot affect public policy without actually getting someone in office. You can rail all you want about purity of standards or your ethics or whatever, but if you don't get someone in, the other side gets to dictate what happens in the legislature.
Okay.
I find that unacceptable.
So it leads to the question of what made you decide after. Well, actually, you're still.
That's basically where we are, where we were until a couple of weeks ago.
And let's go to that. So some notable events occur, namely a bylaws change occurs.
The story is much bigger than a bylaws change. That is looking at the weeds, not really what's going on.
Right. From your standpoint, what is going on?
There have been a lot of, and I call it loosely called grassroots organizations springing up and looking for what they consider conservative purity. Now, you couple that with the way the county parties and the state party are set up, where, especially in the larger counties, you have the capacity to have potentially as many as 2 to 3, in Clark, 4,000 or 5,000 members of the Central Committee.
Okay.
When in fact you have maybe 1 to 2, maybe 300 active people within the party. Now, what this does is creates an opportunity for an organized cadre outside of the party, and I use the word scrum, to come in and scrum the party, to load it up with their folks and take over the party. Now, what our leadership did is we saw this happening. The bylaws were just one part of that in order to get more people onto the Central Committee. And the goal was to change well, that's the interesting part. Because if someone were to ask me what was their goal other than get rid of the leadership,
right,
I can't tell you. Because nobody has ever articulated, go get in control, and then do what? There has never been a statement of, okay, we're going to do this. You get pablum like, we're going to focus on local races. What's that? You're going to focus on the dog catcher. Oh, great.
Right.
Well, all those things are great, but that's not what we were doing for almost 5 years.
Right.
We were going after to split the legislature and get it back in Republican hands, because no matter where you look in city, county, government, almost everything they do is subject to state law made in Carson. I've made this pitch even to the rurals. So if you want this state to be a center-right state, in other words, controlled by Republicans, you got to understand that most of the laws are made in Carson City by people elected in Clark County. Now, I'm not saying it's good, bad, or what, but that's what it is. That's the landscape we have to deal with. And the only way you can win those marginal seats, and Clark's going to have a bunch of them.
Right. They are.
The only way you're going to win that is understand that 40% down there, and in Washoe, a third of the voters who have turned off both political parties and are sitting up and up for grabs.
Right.
And number one, we don't know what they really think. We're starting to find out.
Right.
And number two, they have very low propensity. Right. Their propensity sits around in the 60s, right, compared to the 91% of the two major parties. But the answer is you can't win without a chunk of those. So what we decided was we could see this coming.
Right.
And we said is they're going to go. We don't know what they're going to do with the party.
Right.
So what we said is there has to be another way that we keep the team together and that we keep doing what we're doing. Now, the team is not just the folks doing the work. The team are our major donors.
Wow.
Because they believe in what we're doing. And they believe we're actually getting results from what it is we do. Wow. They can see it over 2 cycles. And they're convinced that what we're going to do has the best chance of actually making a difference in the state.
Okay.
So what did we do? When we realized what the goal was to get rid of leadership, we formed the PAC. Now, the PAC's only been in existence less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Less than 2 weeks.
Okay.
And now, here's the key thing and I've read some of the articles, and right, your friend, was it Apgar?
Blake Apgar.
Blake Apgar.
A colleague, I could say, a colleague more than anything, but
a colleague, yeah. There's something that's been missed in this whole thing about they try to personalize it and say, I resign. Uh-huh. That's true, but it's misleading.
Okay.
You see,
how
I resigned, and every single officer of the county party resigned, plus 2/3 of the board of the executive committee resigned at the same time, and every committee chair, these are the people actually doing work, everybody resigned.
Uh-huh.
And guess where they are now?
Are they here?
All of them.
Every single one of those people?
Every single one.
So they are back in, so the team is back in.
The team is here. The team never left. And we're going to do exactly what we were doing.
At Nevada Wins.
And I will tell you this, we have raised, in 2 weeks, we have raised close to $200,000.
Wow.
And that's both, it has been cash and in kind. In kind being, things.
Right.
The 2 offices were donated by a major donor, 2 different donors.
Okay.
And that shows their confidence in what we're doing.
So you kind of said the bylaws change. Going back to the first question, bylaws change is not the major issue precisely. But it was was that a sign to you that...
No, it was we saw the signs way before that. We knew what they were doing. And we also knew, because there's so many slots on the open slots on the Central Committee, that at some point they would have enough members of the Central Committee, not the people that serve for 4 and 5, and some go back 15, 20 years.
Right.
Those aren't the people that were pushing for a leadership change.
Right.
Everybody from the outside scrumming in. We knew that was coming. And this has never been about a title or a party position. To me, those are all irrelevant. What we want to do is elect Republicans, and mainly to the state legislature.
So I'm going to go back a little bit further. You guys saw the writing on the wall, so to speak. You saw the clouds forming from your standpoint. What was the decision-making process like that made this moment a reality?
Well, I think one of the things is when we went, we were together in a meeting, a bunch of the leadership, and we started understanding that we were spending more time messing around with what I call inside politics, rather than getting on with doing what we wanted to do, which is our programs. And we kind of it was like you sit around and saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're worrying about all this stuff, and we're spending time in meetings. No, we got to stop this. And we decided the PAC was a much better way to go, cleaner, and we could do our programs. We could do cleaner interfaces with our donors who believed in the program. Our program is fairly simple, and it's not like it's been a secret. We have published our program for every term I've been in there, and what it is the walking program, the calling program with using paid interns. We have a very vigorous get out the vote as we get closer to the election time. It's targeting the independents, and we do a slate mailer. In fact, in the last cycle, we did 3 slate mailers, and we did it. We did Republican households, Washoe, Republican households, Clark, and independent households in Washoe. And the 3 of them cost us $83,000, which we raised with no problem.
Wow.
To do it, and we did it for roughly 29 cents a piece for the mailers. Now, the reason that's significant is you check around with some of the candidates and find out how much they spent for their mailers per piece, mail piece. Just ask. I won't even tell you what the answer is, but you're going to be shocked.
No, I imagine that.
And we share that with any candidate that's asked. We don't do it. We don't do it through us. We said, here are the vendors. And if you do this, you will get this kind of a price.
So you, in regards to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
In regards to that element of campaigning, you don't go through a centralized clearinghouse or a centralized go-to person to...
Good Lord, no.
Okay. So you actually give candidates the option to pick their vendors rather than going, this is our isolated vendor.
Correct.
This is our preferred vendor kind of thing.
No. We said, check to these guys because this is how we did it. I said, this is our mail house, this is our design, this is our print.
Okay. I want to ask, going back a little bit, the decision-making process. What time of year was this precisely when you started seeing these signs?
I can't really, when we start seeing this?
Yeah.
Oh, probably started, about April, May, I would say. April, May, we started to see this.
Wow. It's been kind of an ongoing.
It's ongoing. Those groups were always out there, but all of a sudden they were starting to push more people onto the central committee. And I think one of the things that bothered all of us was one of their tactics seems to be confrontation.
Right.
I call them the pot bangers.
The pot bangers of the scrum.
Yeah, they seem to want to make a lot of noise. But I've yet to figure out what specifically is, what's their goal, other than getting control.
You, going back to that topic, what is their goal? Did these folks have like an identified centralized leader from their standpoint?
I can't. If they do, I don't know who they are.
As a matter of fact, it looked to us like there were groups within the group.
Exactly. But I don't want to get into their little squabbles. That's their business.
Right.
What I do know is the one thing they agreed on is they want to, quote, take over the party.
Right.
But to do what, I have no idea.
And that leads, let's go back a little bit to the night of September 28th, because I want to know exactly what happened from your standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Were you there?
I was not, no.
That was the central committee meeting.
The meeting, they proposed bylaws. I can't remember the whole thing. What I do remember of the whole thing is that it was confrontational. It was people shouting. It was a lot of noise, and nobody followed any kind of procedure. And as the meeting got completely out of hand with just people shouting and screaming and running around the room and refused to come to order, I do remember that I gavelled the meeting shut because there was no way to keep order at all.
After several warnings.
After several warnings, I said, we cannot continue to do business this way. And I said, okay, bang. And they're going to have to deal with the aftermath themselves.
So this is what I want to get clarity on, because this is what the coalition, or at least the scrum, you call it, basically decided to do after you left, and try to reconvene the meeting and continue the meeting, and then decide to post another meeting on the 11th. Do you, at that time in space, were you aware that they had done this that night?
I was aware that people stayed at the meeting after the meeting. I don't know how many. There's no way to ascertain that. I don't know what they did. The thing I can tell you is that when we, at the board meeting, or the executive committee, I keep calling the board, the executive committee meeting last Monday, when I resigned, and everybody else resigned at the same time, the executive committee still had members on it who were present. And according to the bylaws, they then appointed interim officers, which is under the bylaws they can do. In fact, we encourage them to actually, at that board, at that executive meeting, you need to appoint interim officers until such time as you can have an election. And they did do that. And those, as far as I know, those officers are the ones in charge of the party.
And that's who's right now running.
Right. Mark Leonard,
Carol
Feinberg, and Sandra Lenars. She's the treasurer. And it was important to us that they appoint an interim treasurer so that Darren McDonald could resign, because he can't resign as a fiduciary treasurer. He couldn't resign until they appointed one. So when they did appoint Sandra, he handed her all the codes, everything to get into the books. And since she'd been the past treasurer, it was seamless.
Right.
So, in fact, we wanted them to be at least follow some semblance of order in going forward. We're not against them. They can do whatever they want to do. But we're going to do what we think is in the best interest of getting Republicans elected to the legislature. And that ain't it.
And when you say we, you're talking about the
team. The team. This team it has breadth, it has depth, and it has credibility.
In the days following the 28th, because that's what I'm trying to understand to the fullest from your standpoint as much as possible. What happened precisely?
I don't know what you mean.
So you gavel the meeting shut.
Right.
And with that intention, you believe that meeting is closed.
That meeting is closed.
No new business, no old business, no nothing can come from it.
No.
So as far as you're concerned, that's over.
It's over. And the new officers were appointed at the board meeting. So I think there's no disagreement between whoever they are and us. That was the right thing to do. The executive committee appoint interims until they can have an election.
And you need to be clear that the chairman has a right to gavel the meeting.
I can gavel a meeting. I do not need a vote if it's out of control. And it was definitely out of control. And that's my judgment. It's not subject to...
Well, and it was. You gave several warnings prior to gaveling it. He could have gavelled at any time, but he gave several warnings and then gavelled.
And then gavelled at 8:45.
Well, I don't remember the time.
I don't remember the exact
the quoted time.
Yeah.
So the meeting's gavelled. You guys, in the days after, and that is what I kind of want to understand to the best of my ability. What happened?
I have no idea. You mean... I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. I don't understand the question.
Okay, I'll clarify. I apologize. So the meeting's over. The next day, do people from this group approach you and say, hey, we continued the meeting, and we think you're out of order, and et cetera, et cetera?
We had two people come in. Was that after? Oh, that was before.
That was before. That was the meeting, after the meeting prior to that.
Okay, yeah. No one came. No one talked to us.
Okay. So no one talked to you to try to address the meeting prior?
No.
To try to work out some kind of negotiation or anything?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to speed up to the morning of let's say the night of the 10th. The night before, the Sunday, October 10th.
That was a Sunday.
That was a Sunday. Yeah. Before you resigned. Were you planning on resigning the next day?
Yes.
So you already decided at some point.
We had all decided that we were better off operating through the PAC, or operating our programs through the PAC and not through the party.
Is there an exact date when that decision kind of comes to fruition?
No.
But it was it subsequently after the 28th?
There is no yes or no to that.
Okay.
Everybody was thinking about, can we really continue to operate our programs? through the county.
And what spurred that was there was a meeting prior to the 28th where the monthly meetings were voted in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that
and the monthly meetings only had one purpose.
Right.
That's so they could propose new members and vote them in.
Right. To kind of keep filling the roles.
Keep filling these people who had never, ever volunteered or done anything with the party previously.
Okay. So the night before, what's going through your mind?
Nothing. I mean, I don't. People don't operate that way.
Well, and I don't think it was agonizing for anybody.
Nobody
it was a build-up.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that just kept building up.
Okay.
So those of us that were on leadership team and were there every day saw the build-up.
We saw the build-up and we realized, okay, we just need to go. And we're not going to fight. We're not going to fight this. I mean, I know Clark decided to fight it. We didn't.
Let me ask a silly question in reference to that. Why decide not to contest and try to fight this from your standpoint?
Because the goal was never to keep Michael Kadenacy as the chair of the party. That's never been the goal. Huh. I look at it as a volunteer position. In fact, not only as a volunteer, I'm one of the larger donors to the party.
Oh.
And so I contribute time, talent, such as it is, and treasure. But why? Not to have a position or a title. I don't need it. I'm 83. I'm never going to run for office. I don't need a title. So what I want to do is I want to get a result. So I got to look at where do I spend my time, my money, and my talent. And I said, it ain't there. Because you're spending more time with this inside ball game all the time. No, stop it. Here, we decide by consensus. And it's interesting because I've heard the meme out there that I was a tyrant. Well, ask my team. Do you think they would have followed here if I was a tyrant? Of course not.
I want to kind of touch on that real quick because that is a criticism that your critics do accuse you of. What are your thoughts on that?
He's not. I work with a man every day for the last almost 3 years. He's not a tyrant. Actually, Michael is the dream manager because he discusses what needs to be done, and then he lets you go and do it. Huh. So he doesn't micromanage. He doesn't get upset if something does. We were all volunteers, so there was no basis for that. So that tyrant came out from people who never spent, like he said, one day inside the office volunteering.
Okay.
And I can give you another example if I can.
Okay.
We were in a meeting.
And just to clarify, you're Valerie, the communications.
I'm Valerie Michael, and I'm the communications person, yes.
Okay.
We were in a meeting. This was not after the September 28th. It was prior to the September 28th when two people came in and wanted to discuss some things with us. So they came in, and some of the team sat down, and one of the people coming in said, we want to go after races other than state legislature, and people don't feel like you will let us. Michael said, what kind of races? So she said that. The first one out of her mouth was governor. His comment was, do it. So there was no red lighting of anything. Okay. He opened the door and said, do it. That's where, and this is a big crux in this whole thing, people want to say, we want this, we want that, but they're not doing it. They're not stepping inside the office. They haven't stepped inside the office to do it, to help do it.
Right.
So, Michael is not a tyrant.
Kind of swinging off that meeting you're referring to. So these people came up to you and said, hey, we want to target certain races, we want to do certain initiatives. And did they have like a piece of paper or a plan ready to go? Or was it just talking about it?
It was talk.
Okay.
And again, whatever Michael said, go ahead and do it. Mm-hmm. Or how about if we sit down and compromise on that? There was nothing. There was an agenda in their heads, and we never could get what that was out of them.
How did that meeting end? Did it end pretty amicably, or was it pretty abrupt, or what happened to that meeting?
Okay, so obviously you've heard about the incident.
Yeah. Oh, but.
Okay. What happened is people from that group, while we're having the meeting, came in through the front door and confronted.
With the camera running.
Okay.
Confronted our receptionist. And she came back where we were, and she was in tears because she had been so bullied. She was in tears.
Okay.
And at that moment in time, I asked them to leave, the two people who were in the meeting. I said, the meeting's over.
Yeah.
After that kind of behavior, please leave.
What time of year was this? Did this event occur?
What was happening just
It was the meeting before the September 28th, so it was July, August?
No, it was later than that.
Early September?
So, yeah, early September.
Early September, okay. So
that's the only meeting we had.
So let me get this right. I just want to understand the layout of the situation, because if my memory serves correctly, your office is like used to be on the left side of the room, right?
We're in the back of the room.
In the back of the room.
Correct.
In the left side of the room.
Right.
And the partitions are set up in a way where you can't see where you're at precisely.
Correct.
So they would have, and the receptionist is up front, isolated.
Correct. Right.
So while you're meeting the back on the left,
right,
these people come in the front.
And confront aggressively, enough to put her in tears.
And did these people with the camera aggressively asserting whatever they were asserting, did they, from your understanding, did they identify their intent of what they're doing?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
They did. They came in with some applications. Now, with the process for nominations, it closes because the applications have to be verified.
Right.
So the secretary has time. Right. They came in, I think it was on a Friday, and the meeting was on a Tuesday, with a stack of applications, and said they wanted them on the agenda, even though they knew that it was closed. And they also came in with the bylaws at that time.
Something like that. But it was a scrum.
Yes, it was a big push at her.
It was more than two.
Okay.
3, 4, 5.
I think there were 4 of them.
4 of them. And they were, like the cameras in the face like that. And that's the kind of thing. And
to a receptionist who had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, the poor receptionist.
Who's a volunteer?
Volunteer.
All volunteers. We're all volunteers. The only people we pay in the office are paid interns, period.
Oh.
So everybody's a volunteer. And to be that aggressive with them, and was I angry? Yes. Because I was angry because how they had treated a volunteer.
And this is while you're having this meeting with
Correct.
2 of these people.
And they knew they had to have known.
It was part of their group.
It was part of the same group.
I just want to understand, how did you know that they were part of the same group?
We knew who came in.
We know the people.
Okay. So it was just a function of knowing who.
You know exactly. Yeah, they can't. You can't work in concert together on one thing and then say, "Oh, we don't know. We don't know what those people are doing." That just doesn't fly.
And again, these are people who have never come into the office for anything, for 1 minute, for the time. And all of a sudden, we've got this group of people, and they're just coincidentally on the same day that are all part of the same group.
Okay. Do you know what group precisely they were with or were with?
Well, you have several. There are 3 patriot groups. I don't know their specific names. You have Conservative Talk Lunch group, and there may be some others, but I can't, because it's an amorphous group.
Yeah.
And made up of other subgroups.
Okay.
So there is no, something you can identify.
Right.
Just like you can't identify their program.
Fair enough. So this meeting happens, the rush occurs, these 2 people are talking to you, and abruptly this is when you decide, hey, you got to go.
When the woman who was on the desk was brought back by, by Jim Sievers.
Wow.
And said, this is what happened, because he had witnessed it.
He had witnessed it. He's one of our leadership members.
Mm-hmm. and he had seen it, and the woman was in tears. And
and one of the people that we were meeting with had been against the fact, had been speaking out about the application process. So when they came in with those applications and tried to force them into an agenda, we knew the connection. I mean, we knew the connection anyway. But
do you know who precisely that person was?
Who
the woman you're referring to, who tried.
Yeah, but I don't want to give names. I don't.
We're not going to talk about names.
We don't want to point fingers. We're just talking situation.
Okay.
I don't want to get into the.
That's getting.
We're not at war with the county party.
No.
You know, they can go and be well and do whatever it is they want to do.
We're simply.
But we're going to do what we're going to do.
Right.
And we think what we're going to do is going to be effective. And we won't comment on what they're going to do because we don't know.
We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know at this point how many more are involved in it,
right.
Who has what positions. We just know, and this goes back to your question a little bit earlier, if I can, why didn't we contest it? It goes back to what he said. When we sat down and thought about how much time was going into this nonsense and where we really wanted to put our time, we wanted our time in moving Nevada forward and getting Republicans elected. We didn't want to deal with any more of the nonsense.
Okay. That's a clear response to that.
Is that clear?
That helps a lot in reference to that question. And now, the incident happens in early September, before the 28th.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go to the meeting of the 28th. It's abruptly ended. In the days after.
Not abruptly. No, that's a mistake.
No, you gabbled. Sorry, you gabbled.
It had already gone on to almost.
Well, he said
2.5 hours.
9 o'clock, somewhere around there.
Somewhere around 9 o'clock. We started at 6:30.
With several warnings.
With several warnings through that meeting that they would refuse to really
settle down.
And people would jump up and scream. And one time it was just like one screaming after another.
Yeah.
And then I found out subsequently that some of this group were going downstairs and buying drinks and bringing them back out. And
this is at Baldini's, just to explain.
Yes,
it was at Baldini's. I have to say, and I really I actually got a chuckle out of it. And I will name because she did it publicly. Monica J on her radio program, and I thought it was amusing. She said, I was a tyrant, and the reason I was a tyrant was that I would not allow alcohol to be sold in the meeting.
During the meeting.
That is an interesting factor. I did not know.
I said, okay, guilty.
And we never allowed it. Michael never allowed alcohol.
I can concur with that.
And you see why? Because, it just feeds this disorder, and then you can't get business done.
Right. I did not know that element of the story was involved.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm glad I'm here today, because that helps clarify why things got, from your standpoint, out of control.
It got out of control because I think some people were...
It contributed.
It contributed.
I don't think it was the cause, but it certainly contributed.
Exactly.
I want to understand something, too, because space limitations, was that an element of this, too? Like you had to be out of there by a certain amount of time, or?
You mean, I don't understand the question.
Did you...
Did I gavel it shut because we're running out of time? No.
Okay. So that wasn't an element of that.
No. It was out of order, completely. Okay. And what I noticed, in hindsight, I realized a few of them may have had one too many cocktails that just made them more boisterous and more... And towards the end, it was getting multiple people were getting up and shouting rather than going to the mic. And it wasn't like they were prohibited. We had 2 microphones. They could have come there. They were always recognized to speak, but that's not the way they wanted to conduct business.
And it's good to know in reference to that element of the equation.
And can I just say?
Yes.
Michael's never had to close a meeting because we've run out of time in a room, ever. Michael runs a very tight, well-organized meeting. And whatever time he gavelled on that meeting, 8:45, 9 o'clock, I think we had the room till 10.
Till 10.
We would have been out of there much sooner had the crowd just done business and not stopped the meeting so much.
Okay. That is good to know. So the room, so you have the space to maneuver.
Yes.
You have the space to operate.
Mm-hmm.
You have the chance, you had the ability to work through what you had to work through.
Right.
And the meeting from your standpoint was that out of control that it required, it was just like, yeah, we're done.
We're done. Because people were standing up, shouting, running up and down aisles. Mm-hmm. And some of them confronted poor Phyllis, who's our secretary. Yeah. Went into her face, shouting at her and throwing stuff down in front of her. I just don't. That kind of behavior is not acceptable.
So you were getting all these reports. You guys were getting all these reports of what was going on. You were seeing this, and this just made sense to you to go, we're done.
You're talking about gaveling the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes. We were all there.
We were all there. I didn't see reports. I was watching it deteriorate. The longer the evening went on, the more
we had to stop, the more shouting.
Yeah. More shouting as it going on.
This is going to sound like a bizarre question, but I just want to understand a concern you might have had this meeting continued. What was an ultimate worry you had if this meeting had continued on that night?
I had no ultimate worry.
Okay. I just want to understand if that was a concern, if people's safety was a concern to you at some point.
Well, it's not the safety. I think I didn't really become concerned with that. At the end of the meeting, as people were leaving, there was some behavior that was very problematic. There were a couple of very large individuals that tried to stop people from leaving.
Oh, wow.
I don't know which group they were from. It was reported to me, I don't know whether it was true or not, that some of these groups, the patriot groups, had some Proud Boys in it. And
Proud Boys from Washoe County.
See, again, now it's third party. I don't know. Right. I was told some of them were Proud Boys. That's all I was told. I know I had one of our sound technicians, when he tried to leave, he said, "You can't leave unless you sign this petition." I don't know what the petition was.
Yeah, there were a few people that
and he basically told them to put it where the sun didn't shine and left, pushed past them. But there was some aggressive behavior at the door, which I find problematic.
This is why I do interviews, because these are details that are important to understand and to see what the picture was, because I unfortunately wasn't there, and at the same time you guys were, and you're helping me understand.
I walked out, nobody bothered with me, but he walked out. I think about 10 or 15 minutes.
Nobody bothered with me either, but I walked out as soon as he gavelled. I walked out. But I was approached in the parking lot by somebody who said, "Did you get out okay? Did anybody try to force you to stay?" So apparently that was going on after I left.
So, wow. It's this kind of behavior that the team found problematic. But we're not going to deal with that. That's going to be for the new leadership to take over. We want to focus on campaigning.
Okay.
We're going to be campaigning.
So I'm going to speed ahead and go to that morning. And I just want to understand that morning of the 11th. Because now it's kind of getting to a little more present day and a little more in the solution, so to speak. So if you can walk me through a little bit of that morning, walk me through if you can.
I gavelled the meeting. You're talking about the exec?
Yeah.
I gavelled the meeting. We started with the normal pledge, minutes, and then we did a treasurer's report. And I wanted that on the record. Okay. So we left them with $22,000 in the bank account.
Okay.
Okay. And then what I did is told them I'm resigning, but it's effective after everybody, when we're going around the room and everybody's going to say what they're going to say, mainly the people who are resigning. So I said, I'm resigning. I'll be the last one. It'll be effective then. So everybody went around the room, and everybody, the ones who were going to resign, resigned, which is the majority of the exec, except for Darren McDonald. And then I said, mine's effective now. I handed the gavel to Darren, who was the last remaining officer. See? So gave him the gavel, and then I walked out, and so did the other executive members who had resigned. We walked out of the meeting, and then it has been reported by Darren that he then indicated to the group that it was up to them to appoint interim officers until such time as they could organize a election at a central committee meeting, which they did. And they elected the officers we mentioned to you, Mark Leonard, Carol, and Sandra. And Sandra.
Okay.
And then when that was done, he resigned and handed them the gavel and left the meeting.
Now, if my memory serves correctly, in your office, you had effects, personal effects, and belongings of the office. Did you collect those before the meeting or after you resigned?
Those were all completely out. I had removed everything because I knew I was going to resign.
So this had been done before the meeting?
Of course.
And imagine the other officers who announced that that morning that they were resigned had already made
They had already cleaned out whatever they wanted to take of their personal effects.
Got it. So when you guys resigned that morning, you didn't have to go back to the office and pack up?
No, we handed them the keys. None of us have keys to the offices. And we wanted that on the record, too.
So it was a clean break?
Clean break. As I say, we don't want to interfere with them. It's up to them to do it now. Yeah. And we also indicated that, that if they need codes or something like that and they have difficulty, we'll spend a little time, but that's not where we're going to spend our time. We turned everything over to them. They have everything they need in order to run the party.
Okay. So, clean break, you guys resign.
Right.
You're done. You give your announcement. So prior to this event, the only people that knew about your resignation was that of the team. And
that I can't. Nobody can know that for sure.
Right.
Somebody might have heard it. Who knows?
So
if you're asking, though, if they were prepared for this?
Yes.
I figure that's what your question was.
Oh.
On their agenda for their Central Committee meeting, which was that night, I believe, was the possible removal of officers.
Right.
That was on their
item
agenda.
13.
Yes.
That was
item number
11th.
13, I think.
The 11th.
Item, is that what you said, item 13?
I said item 13.
Yeah, item 13.
But at the end of the day.
So if that was on there, my point is they should have had a plan at that point.
Right. So they had, from your standpoint, you'd already resigned. You've been pretty good about keeping this quiet, relatively, and you put that in resignation, and then that eventually is how the world found out about your resignation.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, we all found out within an hour of ourselves.
I published it.
Yeah.
I wasn't hiding it. We published it, and why?
With Ron Connect's support resignation from the Carson committee.
And he's the president of this PAC.
Which we will definitely talk about shortly here. I promise we'll get to that. So this is going to sound like a really, really mundane, not mundane question, but an odd question to ask. But you resign that morning. What's the first thing you do after you resign that morning? After the meeting?
Drove here.
Wow. Came straight to this office.
With a lot of the team.
And again, our intent was to keep doing what we were doing. We didn't miss a beat.
We didn't miss a beat.
That took some organization.
I'm going to swing back a little bit because that weekend is an eventful weekend in a lot of ways.
Not for us.
Not for us.
Not for us. It wasn't for us. I'm serious. It wasn't for us.
Because I want to understand that weekend. I think that's Sunday.
You're talking the weekend before the resignation?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Sunday. Approximately the same time the resignation happens the day before, almost 24 hours before, an email goes out to the Central Committee lists about the existence of Nevada Wings.
The existence of what? Nevada Wings.
Yes. And
somebody else did that.
Right.
Yeah, somebody else did that.
So that
anonymous. Was that the anonymous one?
That's the anonymous
yes,
one.
Okay.
That's the anonymous email.
It's public record.
We all got it. We all got
it's
the
public
email.
record. So nobody was trying to hide anything. We knew it was public record.
What were your thoughts when that happened? When
it went public?
Yeah.
Nothing.
I can't stress enough that those of us that moved over to the PAC did not anguish over this.
No.
We just stayed focused. It was, what are we doing over here? How can we keep doing it with messing with the noise? And that was the extent of it.
I like that. That's a good line.
Okay.
How can we do exactly what we're doing without the noise?
Without the noise. There was no anguish. There was no, oh my gosh. There was no, should we sue? There was none of that. It was like, okay, we can't do what we're doing. We can't accomplish it here. Let's do this. And that's what we did.
Okay.
We're focused on getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do exactly the same thing. Boots on the ground, slate mailers, targeting races that can be flipped.
So going back to that morning, you guys literally came straight here and went back to work.
You're back to work.
So it was a simple matter of just taking care of business elsewhere that morning and just doing what you did.
We moved our volunteer hours. We were volunteers there, and we decided to be volunteers here.
We're volunteers, It's not like we're allowed to donate our time, treasure, and talent
wherever we want to do it. Yes.
So the only people who paid via Nevada Wins is the interns and.
Correct.
Period. That's it. Interns.
Period.
That is good to know. So only paid staff.
And that's well known. Even with the party, it was well known. Nobody got paid but the interns.
Same when we did the party. Nobody was paid.
I'm glad you said that because I want to clarify that.
I know a lot of PACs you have a paid executive
director. Yeah.
No, we don't have any of that. We're all volunteers.
So
that's the way it's going to stay.
And is that to maximize economic effectiveness or your ability to spend money in this organization?
What we believe is the money is best spent on the interns. Now, there's some attendant costs with their software costs. We do have some
overhead.
We have some overhead costs, but the two biggest items, the two offices, are donated.
Wow. So that clears that
totally, and they're and we've got them now till the end of this cycle. We'll worry about next cycle and the next cycle, meaning the election cycle. So until a year from November.
Okay.
And it's free.
That's what nearly 13 months.
Correct.
Of free rent.
Free rent in two offices.
I'm glad I got my months down. So, life after October 11th has simply been focused in this office and operating out of this office.
Correct. And our Clark office, too.
And the Clark office.
Yeah.
Who runs the Clark office?
Right now, we have one board member down there, which is Julie Herford. We're looking to recruit a couple more from that area. And I will share with right now we have 8 board members. We will probably go to 12, but probably not much more than that. We're looking for a couple from more from the rurals. So if you look at our board, there are people here up in Washoe, which is still. We also have one in Clark, one in Carson, which is Ron Connect, and then we have Lee Hoffman, who's in Elko.
And Lee Hoffman is the former state party committee member.
He was a national committee man, he's still the chair of the Elko County Party.
Got it.
And he's a board member. So, and I will tell you, every single board member has made a significant financial contribution to the PAC. So because we are already throwing money into the pot ourselves. So we're not asking donors to do something we are not willing to do ourselves.
If I may ask, on the significant contribution, how sizable is that?
That will come out in our C&Es. At this point, we're not going to show that.
Okay.
And it may change. Most of us are already indicated a willingness to increase what we've given. But we're still talking about that. But we think let's put it this way, we are willing to increase our participation if we have to.
So we're now here at Nevada Wins. We're, as they say, more of a solution than dealing with the problem you used to deal with. How do you feel today?
Optimistic.
Okay.
Very optimistic. I think the fact that we've already raised, having only done this for a couple of weeks,
$100,000.
That ain't too shabby.
No, not too bad. Not too bad with a week difference. Overall, in the last, if someone were to ask you about your tenureship as chair of the Washoe County Republican Party, how would you describe it?
We made a difference.
That's a good way to say it.
We made a difference. I didn't say I did. We.
Okay.
It's taken 5 years, and I think the fact that they're all over here shows that we built a pretty good team, and a team that likes working together.
Do you miss the job?
Miss what job? I still have it. Working with the team. That's what I want.
Okay.
The team, it's where the team is not germane. It's the fact that the team knows what it's doing, and we're pushing forward.
It is a great team, too.
It's a great team.
It's a great team.
How did you build that cohesiveness with the team members? Like what was your modus operandi in terms of supporting and addressing your team members?
I think as someone who's been on the outside watching me do it.
I can tell you that when I came, my experience in coming to the party, I walked into the party doors out of frustration with what was going on in Nevada. And I was actually thinking about moving out of Nevada. I've been here 50 years. And I walked in and met with Michael. And he very clearly laid out his vision of what he wanted to accomplish. And I thought, it's going to be cheaper than moving. And I've been here for 50 years, so this would be great if we could turn it around, which was the goal. We need to turn the state around. Working with him for some time, his manner of management is just as I described to you earlier. He doesn't hover over you. He doesn't micromanage in any way. He sits down with the team and says, here's the vision. Let me have your input. Okay, everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Go. Yeah. That's an easy way to accomplish a lot, especially when you're not getting a paycheck. The entire leadership was working full time. It was a full-time job.
Wow. I think that's what most people don't understand is this team was working, like a full-time job.
Like a full-time job. Yes, it was a full-time job, sometimes more than a full-time job. When we were working,
most of the team, with very few exceptions, was throwing in. Now, maybe they went to all the fundraisers, or maybe, for me, okay, I'm lucky enough to have done well during my career, so I'm able to do a little more. So I'm always good for at least one, sometimes two premium tables at Lincoln Day, or one of them. I can do that. Once in a while, I'll write a check. I'm always buying stuff, and I don't never look. It's always in-kinded rather than looking for reimbursement. This team doesn't want reimbursements. Our expenses aren't reimbursed.
Okay.
I go down fundraising. I'm going on a fundraising trip now to Napa Valley. I'm addressing a donor group down there. All my expenses I pick up. I don't expect the PAC to even pay my expenses.
So this is coming out of your pocket.
It's coming out of my pocket.
You guys pay for your own way.
Everything we do, travel expenses, what have you, we pick them up ourselves. We do not bill. We do not get reimbursement. And I guarantee you, there are other county parties and, dare I say, state party. That's not the case. They may be unpaid, but their expenses, at least if I believe their C&Es, they're getting significant money out of the state party.
Yeah.
All you got to do is read the C&Es.
Which I will. I will do that.
Encourage you to do it.
It'll be some fun nighttime reading.
And can I just finish with one last thought about the team? Because Michael allows the team to do their jobs, and because the team we have a lot of professionals on our team. We have a former owner of software companies. We have a former doctor. We have a former finance advisor. We have a lot of very serious professional people who understand how the job works. And consequently, we all help each other. So it's not I'm communications and he's this and he's electioneering. We don't sit in our different silos. We all come together and help when somebody needs help. And Michael is in the middle of that. Michael helps everybody.
That helps clarify the working dynamic for me.
That's what I told you we're a consensus-based organization. And even if we have disagreements, we disagree as colleagues.
Yeah.
It never gets into
There's no fighting.
Ever.
There's never been any fighting. Ever.
Among the team.
So about Nevada Wins, the donors, and I don't want to ask about them precisely, but
I wouldn't tell you precisely.
Fair enough. How do you guys reach out to your donors? Is it what would be the atypical donor of Nevada Wins besides yourselves?
I think what you have to understand is that how we view donors. We view them as our partners. We consider them part of the organization. It's one of the reasons why we were so successful in the last cycle. Because we brought them into situations where they could view how the sausage was made. And as they did, they developed confidence in the leadership team. When they were contributing, they didn't contribute to this organization called the party. They gave it to because they knew the team. And they didn't just meet. They had contact with multiple people in the team. And they were able to see, okay, this team functions, and I can see how they will get done, what they say they will get done. Give you a very good, just one anecdotal piece of information, which I think is very key. People ask, why did you go to Clark in the last cycle? Because we're Washoe County.
Right.
And the genesis of that was we had one donor that came to us who had been with us for 2 years. He had viewed everything we did, and he wrote some fairly sizable checks to the party. And he said, you need to be in Clark on these 3 races because what you do works.
Right.
And he said, how much do you need? And we told him, and he wrote the check. Right. So we were down there because a donor encouraged us to be down there.
But that money was specifically for Clark. It was not Washoe money that he asked us to use.
That donor is not from Washoe. The donor is not from Clark. The donor was from Carson City. So you start to understand the team and the donor. It's not a relationship. They are part of the team. Those donors are. And that's why in the last cycle, I raised $500,000.
And can I ask about this? Because this is naturally going to get raised by some of your critics and possibly the public about this. When you left, the money that was intended for Washoe, did that stay there?
What money was intended for Washoe? See that? I don't understand what the question means. No check that was written to the party went somewhere else.
Okay.
How would I do that? How would I take a check made out to the party and deposit it in the Winds pack? It's just not true. How could I do that? And there's a paper trail on every single donation. Money that was destined, that was paid, was deposited to the, can only be deposited. Now, be aware that the donor has the final say where he writes the check.
That's true.
Okay?
Right.
And once donors found out that we were leaving, it's up to them to decide where they're going to deposit. You don't own, nobody owns donors.
No.
Donors are their own people. They give to whoever they want to give.
So you're saying the donors, when this was going on, when they were seeing what was happening, when they were hearing what was happening, did they approach you saying, hey, wherever you're going, we want to go? Or?
We talk to the donors constantly. We have always talked to the donors constantly. And they were very much aware of what was going on.
All of it.
All of it.
All of it.
Every bit of it.
Meetings, everything.
And it's up to them to make the decisions.
Some of them were at the Central Committee meetings.
Right.
Seeing in
real time.
Right. So I want to clarify this for the record. Just be clear, because I want to get a terminal answer on this and clarify this. So the funds that now are with Nevada Winds, are they they're from those donors, I imagine?
Which donors?
Who our donors are is our business. Until the C&Es came out, you will not know those.
Right.
Nor will we share that. What I can tell you is the donors who give to us knew they were giving to the PAC.
Right. And not the party.
Correct.
Okay. So this wasn't...
Well, wait a minute. Think about it. They wrote checks to the PAC. There is no check made out to the party that got deposited in the Winds PAC.
That is the answer I want to get clarity on.
Don, I think if you realize, if I was a tyrant, why are these people using their own time coming in here and working over here?
And those are
5 people out there.
These are our team.
That's part of the team.
Okay. So your volunteers are actively working today.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's our former doctor right there.
He was, Sharice, a medical doctor, retired. You're talking about a guy that owns multiple businesses, another one who sold businesses. Mm-hmm. When he retired from Silicon Valley, owned 4 different software companies. I mean, this team has heavyweights in it. And they don't need titles. They don't care about the titles. Mm-hmm. They don't need to be part of a party or apparatus and have some position. We get stuck in, we do the job, and we move on. And you know what? We have fun.
We do.
We actually really noticed it once we got over here.
Yeah.
Because all this noise goes away.
You talk about having fun. And does that feel like do you feel like a weight's been lifted off your shoulders since you left?
Absolutely.
I mean, and is that just a function of the fact that you're no longer, you're running a different show?
What we're doing is we're going to run an effective program without the baggage.
Right. Mm-hmm. We're running the same show, just without the baggage.
Without the baggage. The baggage was getting way too heavy.
Yeah. Talking about the future. Let's talk about what Nevada Winds is going to do. Mm-hmm. What can we expect from this organization?
Well, what you're going to see is taking our story, our program, and taking it statewide. And we're going to be looking at strategies to take back this state. This state is a center-right state. And there are people leaving the 2 major parties in droves and filling the ranks of those nonpartisans. And the first party, let's say the candidates from the first party, that can interface and capture the bulk of those now disaffected people is going to control the state. And I want that to be the center-right people.
Center-right, got it.
Center-right.
And you talked about, replicating those programs that you did at Washoe here. That's the walking, the phone banking, and direct mail campaign.
Everything.
So everything.
It's everything we did. Well, every program we had, because it's all geared to the same thing. It's winning, flipping marginal seats, at least for the next 2 cycles. Right. We want to capture the state Senate first, and then maybe 2 cycles capture the Assembly. And we firmly believe that if we do that, the constitutional officers, congressional races, and even Senate races will also be helped. But those are not our goals. Now, it may change down the road, but right now, for at least 2 cycles, we see as the state legislature as the key target.
And nothing but.
No. No, we won't.
That's where all the laws are made.
That's where all the laws are made. I was asked, what about the school board? How about CRT and all this stuff?
Right.
They said, it's already mandated.
It's already legislated.
It's already legislated.
So we change the legislature, we change that.
You change, it's almost everything you look at that conservatives or center-right people are concerned about are first decided by the state legislature. County government, city governments, school boards have very limited ability to change, and the parameters within which they can change are set by the legislature. So the first step is state legislature. Even if your big issue is in the school board, you've got to do something about the state legislature first.
Going back to having fun and being liberated, so to speak, from the pressures of the minutiae of local politics.
Of what?
The minutiae of local politics.
It's not local politics, it's party politics.
Party politics.
That's very different.
Sorry, thank you.
See, I differentiate between local politics and party politics. Party politics has become an end of itself. Who's going to be the next chair? Oh my God. Nobody's focusing on what you really need to be focused is winning races. And then which are the most important races and why? You need to go through that. We now focus on what we believe are the important races, and we're going to focus on them. And that's what makes it fun.
Did you feel, as in your last days as chair, and I'm going to swing back on this real quick, did you feel that the party politics issues were just getting too oppressive or too in the way?
Well, they're definitely in the way. They're in the way. They take up too much time and involvement on the part of leadership that have to constantly deal with stuff that isn't productive. Doesn't really get you to an end.
I imagine here in Nevada wins. That's not an issue.
Not an issue at all.
And let me run a scenario, because I'm curious as to how you guys will deal with this. Let's just say I'm a donor or a supporter, want to be supported, and I have an issue. I'm a one issue voter kind of guy or gal, and I'm willing to write you guys a sizable donation, but under the condition that you guys are going to get involved in that kind of stuff. What would you say to me?
You said, you know our program. You want to support us, great. You want to support something else, that's great too. You need to find another organization that's going to push your issue. We start out with, here's our program. That doesn't mean we can't shift a little bit or broaden it a little bit. But we have a program that is proven through 2 cycles. So we don't want to, what I call, chase shiny objects. And that's very easy to do.
So you guys are going to try to stay focused on the state legislature.
Correct.
GOTV.
Boots on the ground, but going after independence.
And trying to win elections.
But going after independence to do that. In other words, we're not, let's say, I'll give you for instance, we're going to go after Senate District 8 and 9.
Okay.
And they're both in Clark. We're not going to be a substitute for the candidates, their campaign. In other words, we're not going to pick up the phone and call Republicans on the phone. We're not going to hit Republican doors. We leave that to the candidate.
Right.
What we're going to do is go after those independents.
In effect, you're going to do the job that traditional Republican parties have done in the past.
Well, I don't know what traditional parties, because what I've observed, at least in Nevada, is I don't know what political parties did, because I know that when I came in to the Washoe, for probably at least 6 years before I took over, there was no program, period.
Okay.
You know that. You were around.
Yes, I was.
They did nothing.
And I can attest to some degree that there was not as much organization as there was until you came along.
You tell me what they did. Send a few volunteers over to the RNC headquarters to make a few phone calls. That's not a program.
So I feel like as we come to the end of this conversation today, and I appreciate you spending the time with me today to talk to me about a lot, and I mean a lot. What do you want? I know you've hit this a few times, but I want to get it in a clear, concise manner. What is your goal, or what would you like to see happen over here at Nevada Wins at the end of the 22 cycle?
We flipped the 2 Senate districts, and we flipped some of the 6 assembly districts that we'll be going after.
Okay.
That's what I want to see.
So flipping districts.
Because the only races we look at are the ones that with what I call the delta. In other words, the shift in those independents that we flip these competitive races.
Do you foresee any potential not conflicts, but competition in what you're doing?
There's all kinds of PACs already. So.
There are all kinds of PACs. They're each formed for their particular purpose, and we wish them well.
And the goal is to turn the state around. So if they're all working on it, that's
different
even
pieces
better.
of it. There are multiple pieces to the puzzle.
Absolutely.
We just think this is the one where we can make the biggest contribution.
Okay. In closing, is there anything I didn't cover, or anything I didn't ask you that you'd like the people of Northern Nevada to know about Nevada Wins?
I think the biggest thing that I think that's being, let's say, not overlooked, but it's kind of dropping through the weeds,
right,
is that the team moved over.
Uh-huh.
And it was all of the elected officers, the bulk of the executive committee, all of the committee chairs. That's kind of the thing that all moved over here so that they could continue the programs.
So the mission can continue.
The mission continues. This is not a club that everybody wants to stand up and pontificate about whatever issue that comes into their brain at that time. We have a clear goal, clear mission, and we know what each of us know our parts of it, and we're just getting on with it.
Next closer question I want to ask, is there anything that you'd like the public to know about your resignation that hasn't been told about this moment, that event?
I think the main thing is the public doesn't know is that it was the entire team. That story is not out there. I think it's only mentioned in passing. It's not like this bulk. It looks like me coming in a few people. It's not true. It's the whole leadership community.
So it was a clean sweep, isn't it?
Clean sweep.
Something I want to be mindful of going forward because
that gets missed. And I'm not saying that to say they're bad people or we're the only good guys. What I'm saying is we're mission focused, and everybody came because they believe in the mission, not just me.
And I guess my last closer I have to say, besides giving you the floor here.
Can I just say something about the team moving over? Michael didn't approach the team and say, I want you to come to. We went to Michael and said, we want to be with you.
So you yourself said, hey, I'm going.
Absolutely. I said, Michael, I'm leaving. I knew he was starting the pack. I said, I want to be a part of that pack if there's a place for me. So it wasn't him soliciting all of us.
Okay. That is helpful to know, especially coming from you about that. I didn't ask that question because I wasn't sure how that event occurred.
That's how it
occurred.
I never asked.
So people just came up to you and said, hey, I'm going with this.
His leadership team that left, yes, because we work with him day in and day out. So where did we want to be? With the mob that has no plan B, or with him that's going to move forward with the very programs we've been working on?
Closing thought, besides the election of 2022, besides your leading the Washoe County Republican Party, you say you wish them well. Mm-hmm. What hopes do you have for that organization after you're leaving?
I have concern for whether the party will survive.
Okay. Legitimately, like whether or not it will functionally be a going concern.
Correct.
But it would be a plus if they could get it together.
Yeah, it would be a plus.
And function. I mean, that's just one more addition to the mission.
Can I ask simply why that is a concern for you?
What do you mean?
Why they may not be a going concern?
Because I haven't seen any evidence that they have a plan to go forward. I'm not saying they don't have one, but I've seen no evidence of one.
And I guess my last question, my last question.
Last question.
Anything else I didn't ask you that you'd like me to know about Nevada Wins?
I think we've covered everything.
Mr. Chairman, I want to say thank you. Mr. Kadenacy, Michael. I want to say thank you for giving me the time, the energy, and the focus this morning to talk about a very interesting series of events we've seen. And I wish you well here at Nevada Wins. And I thank you for your time. And that ends my interview with Michael Kadenacy. I always want to make sure I'm properly pronouncing your name. And Ms. Valerie Michaels, who was here with me this morning in our interview. That ends my interview at approximately, according to my watch, 11:47 a.m. and out on 1.